So I've spent the last week or so away from Destiny, and by away I mean as far away as you can physically get from my keyboard, but in between the 17-hour flights, all-you-can-eat buffets, and an equivalent amount of Pepto-Bismol tablets, I spent a lot of time brainstorming loadouts for the upcoming Crucible rework, and today I'm here to present my findings to the board. That's you. If you've played Checkmate this season, you're probably well aware that the meta in this environment is usually dictated by things that get around the system, things that feel like they're not in a different environment at all, or basically can ignore the Checkmate system just by the nature of what they are. I'm talking things like Devil's Ruin being an infinite ammo fusion rifle, or bow hand cannon hot swapping still being able to insta-kill, stuff like that. Because things like Devil's Ruin, bows, Fighting Lion, even target lock submachine guns, they're getting nerfed. They were outliers in the new system and Bungie caught them. Today though, I'm going to tell you about the things they didn't. Before we get into it, in case you're not up to speed on the patch notes, here are the parts you really need to know. Number 1, everyone is getting 30 more HP across the board. Number 2, precision damage is going to get you the same time to kills as before, but body shots are going to do way less. Number 3, special ammo is going to be much less abundant. You have to earn it now by getting kills instead of just being given it on respawn. And number 4, abilities across the board are going to regenerate a lot more slowly. With this in mind, I want to clarify that my goal for this video is not just to list everything that's going to be good, but to cover everything that I think is going to be substantially better in this sandbox compared to the previous one. For example, Peacekeepers were good before, they're still going to be good now. I'm not talking about them in this video. What I am here to talk about is that weird shit, those slept-on strategies that I think the balance team is overlooking going into this patch, and the stuff that I'm going to be testing non-stop in the coming weeks. So with that, I've decided to split this video into 3 segments. The first is going to be about weapons and weapon perks, the second will be subclass and armor perks, and in the third, I'm just going to be going over builds for each class that I'm going to be keeping an eye on after the patch. I am personally giving you the Eat Yo Waffles guarantee that something in this video will catch your eye and hopefully give you a creative edge over the other players come Tuesday. And with that, let's get into weapons. Playing Checkmate Trials on Jav 4 a few weeks ago, one of the first things I noticed was that missing your optimal TTK in this environment usually just means you don't get a kill. It's just a lot of extra time for your target to run away or slide behind cover, and so like most people, the conclusion I landed on was, we need DPS perks. But not just any damage perks, things like Kill Clip, Harmony, Memento Mori, etc. Those are obviously still going to be great, but think about the Checkmate monsters that are already catching nerfs. The Devil's Ruin alternate fire, the target lock submachine guns, bows just, I guess, being bows. Like, these are all crazy ways to do burst damage without getting a kill first. Something that's extremely valuable in a game type like Trials, and while Bungie caught these outliers before the update, here's an organized list of the ones they forgot. The number 1 no kill damage perk that I am recommending everyone keep an eye on is Box Breathing, specifically on precision frame scout rifles. Yes, this still 3 taps in Checkmate, giving these scouts a 0.67 TTK from basically any range you want. Even up close where landing 3 crits is tough, that first shot doing over 100 damage is going to give you plenty of other ways to win that fight. If you don't have a good hung jury, keep an eye out for the Glissando in the Lost Sector loot rotations. With Keep Away in the other slot, it can definitely still compete. The second one I'm looking at is going to be Huckleberry. If you are looking for a target lock submachine gun replacement, well, now you found it. You don't even need to be landing hits to start cranking up this thing's rate of fire, not to mention that a kill will fully reload and give you Rampage to start fighting the next guy. I fully expect the horde of Peacekeeper Titans in Trials to start giving this a go, if they can part with their cloud strikes. On the topic of target lock, let's talk about auto rifles. ARs with target lock aren't really a thing right now. The larger magazine on autos makes it harder to take advantage of consistently, and even if you get target lock going, it's very rare for it to actually improve your time to kill. With the new health pools though, I'm guessing those gunfights are going to take a few extra bullets to finish, and unless you're just hitting all crits with your auto every time, I think there's a good chance target lock is going to start mattering on these things. The best thing about this is there's some top tier craftable options here. I'm mostly looking at Rufus's Fury in the kinetic slot, but I'll have my eye on the age-old Bond in the energy slot as well. I'll also give a quick shout out to Spinning Up Suro's Regime here, kind of a similar deal as Huckleberry, but just for auto rifles. Next up in the category is Collective Action. I'm gonna get more into this one in the build section of the video, but if you have a way to generate elemental pickups without defeating an enemy, then Collective Action is gonna be a real threat. And there's a ton of weapons that can roll with it, yes, including SMGs. In a similar vein, let's talk high impact reserves. I saw Camicakes made a video on this already, and I'll link that in the description if you're looking for a more detailed dive, but in lieu of how good target lock has been on SMGs, you might not be surprised to hear that emptying out some of your mag before fighting to take advantage of high impact reserves could easily start being a common tactic. If you look at SMGs with high impact reserves, you'll notice that thankfully all of them are sunset, except the one that's being added tomorrow, with the Adjudicator SMG being added to the Prophecy Dungeon and the new Crossing Over Origin trait being added to all Prophecy weapons. Yeah, y'all better hope this thing has some garbage perks. Okay, a couple more honorary mentions for the no-kill damage boost category. Cold Heart's perk is like target lock but better, but I hesitate to recommend a trace rifle given how the special economy is about to change. Thorn's DOT is technically more damage than other 140s, but that's more useful for other reasons. Quicksilver Storm and its legendary counterparts with the nanotech tracer rockets could potentially fall in this category as well. Gutshot Straight could be interesting to counteract body shot penalties, but that's probably going to be a wait and see type thing. Oh, and probably every charge up a perk exotic as well. Hawkmoon, Taraba, No Time to Explain, Vex Mythoclast.
Uh-oh.
Double down.
Thanks for the orb, dude.
Hell, even Symmetry got a direct buff to its alternate fire. That might be a fun one to keep an eye on. And the last one to mention in this no-kill damage boost perk category is Precision Instrument, especially on precision weapons like Igneous Hammer. If I'm doing my math right, I'm pretty sure this will let Iggy 3-tap Titans through an overshield with all crits. Definitely something to look out for if you're grinding trials. Okay, a few other weapons to mention before moving on to armor and subclasses. I think Osteo Striga and Malfeasance could have a time to shine in the sandbox if you play around proccing their respective explosions rather than aiming for crits. Rat King is going to be up there for me as well. If there's no more target lock SMGs, then this thing might actually be able to duel a bit better. And since abilities are getting lengthened, then this can help Night Stalkers with their invisibility uptime. And along those lines, I see Monte Carlo and Traveler's Chosen getting some more usage to get past those longer ability cooldowns. Some other random things I'm keeping an eye on. If gunfights are taking more bullets to finish, then I think the Ikelos SMG with its ammo on shield break origin trait could be useful, especially in handling multiple targets in a row without reloading. Vigilance Wing is also getting its deterministic recoil this patch, and it's probably going to be a monster, but doesn't really have anything to do with the sandbox, so I'm just going to kind of move past that. I do unironically think, and hear me out, that this could be Glaive's time to fucking shine, baby. With way less shotgun ammo on the field, there's a real argument for just getting up close and personal with the Glaive melee. Remember that Glaives passively regenerate their shields now, even without ammo, so with something like Excalibur, you can just give yourself enough overshield to live a double melee while you poke them. Lastly, I know I said I'd hesitate to recommend a trace rifle, but it is worth mentioning that the nerf to hand cannon flinch is going to help traces out immensely, as incoming flinch is kind of their biggest weakness in duels. With this in mind, the trace I'm actually going to recommend is the Path of Least Resistance. Since special ammo is mostly going to be earned by primary weapon kills, crafting this trace with Harmony is a fun way to take advantage of that while also preserving your green ammo. Oh, and I'll save the Lumina rant for the build section. So when looking at exotic armor and subclasses under the new sandbox rules, I'm really looking for two things. One, things that kill just as fast as before the patch, and two, things that boost the shit out of your ability regeneration. I'm gonna go a bit faster in this section because there's a lot to go through, but I'll expand on some of my favorites when we get to the builds. To get started though, here's a couple of things that are gonna be stronger on all classes after the patch. Number one, Arc subclass builds with Spark of Recharge, Focus, and Haste for a ton of stacking ability regeneration. Pair it with the right exotic armor and you'll forget your cooldowns ever got lengthened. Number two, same thing but with Solar with Ember of Benevolence, and probably paired with Embers of Singeing and Torches if you want to get crazy with it. This is mostly for Gunslinger and Dawnblade since they're better than Sunbreaker when it comes to buffing your teammates, but you know, Sunbreaker's got some other things, we'll get to that later. Number three, and this is not a joke, any of the Aeon Gauntlets with Sect of Vigor. If you're someone who just wants to have their class ability all the time, always, seriously, give this a shot. Number four, anything with non-ability movement. Things like Hunter Dodge and Titan Thruster are going to have lower potency in the new sandbox, but movement tools like Icarus Dash, Shatter Dive, and Blink are going to stay the same. This is also a reason why slide boosting exotics like Stompies, Dunes, Transverses, etc. might be even more valuable now for their added movement, since movement that requires an ability is going to be a bit more scarce. And lastly, from the Firing Range podcast, starting on Tuesday, 7 resilience or higher will force 120s to need 3 crits instead of allowing 2 crit 1 body. It won't help you against Precision Instrument, but if you're struggling against 120s, I'd keep a 7 resil build in your back pocket. Okay, now let's go class by class. For Hunter, the main things I'm looking at are as follows. Frosties for the huge boost to ability regeneration, Ominoculus for the infinite invis chaining, Knucklehead Radar, this one's already great, but I think that the damage boost on low health targets part is going to start mattering a lot more. Shidarachni's Facade to punish people extra hard for hitting body shots and also just for infinite grenade based perks without expending your cooldowns, and Athras's Embrace for the replenishable one-shot body knives and potentially infinite radiant. To a lesser extent, I'm also keeping an eye on these things. Arcstrider melee builds with things like Liar's Handshake. This will really depend on how the damage numbers come out, but I could see it working. Gyro Falcons to spam Volatile and cut down on TTKs, especially if you have a controlled Demolition Sentinel on your team. And finally, the meme pick, Celestial Nighthawk. There is a secondary benefit on this thing that gives extra super energy on precision kills. Considering supers are going to be way less prevalent, I could actually see Nighthawk being a play to get your super by the end of the Trials match. I do think you can actually even run Blade Barrage for the shorter cooldown, but you know, come on, the Goldies funny. Okay, moving on to Titan, number 1 for me is going to be Peregrine Greaves, taking advantage of less shotgun ammo and still one-tapping in the larger health pool. Behemoth to spam crystals indefinitely, which, yes, will still work. Mask of the Quiet One, especially with the arc fragments, could be a good way to keep those abilities up. Feedback Fence, again, if you want to just go for melees while people don't have shotgun ammo, I think this is a fun way to do it. And to a lesser extent, a couple other things. Heart of Inmost Light for the improved abilities, Controlled Demolition. People use this a lot already, but considering how volatile can end gunfights faster, we might see people more deliberately building into this. Insurmountable Skullfort can give you your full melee charge back, but it doesn't one-shot, so I don't really see it getting used over Peregrines. Consecration is getting buffed and might have some viability, but I fucking hate that thing, so I'll believe it when I see it. And lastly, One-Eyed Mask. I'm kind of keeping a wary eye on it, anything that grants you full healing, as you're technically getting 30 more HP back now than you did before, and that might make things like OEM even more viable, although of course it is very good now. Lastly, for Warlock, I Have Another World is going to be my number 1 pick, just flat 50% ability regen all the time. Boots of the Assembler and Astrocyte Verse are definitely going to be in my loadout slots too, but I'll go over those in the build section. Weave Walk is going to be like nigh unkillable now, you just got to really spec into maintaining those melee charges for the uptime. Devour is also going to be even more valuable for Voidwalkers with the full healing and the extra grenade regeneration. Also going to briefly mention that Secant Filaments are a thing, and Empowering Rifts might also be extra fun to work with. Arc Souls for added DPS could be good, Void Souls for weaken and ability regen could be good, and Snap Canceling with Icarus Dash are under the flat cooldown movement options I mentioned earlier. And to a lesser extent on Warlock, I'll be considering Verity's Brow, Crown of Tempest, and Nezarac's Sin for ability regen. Nezarac's is particularly interesting because you can get your super faster. Stag I think could be interesting just to tank hella damage and rifts, and Winter's Guile just to get freaky with some melee fights. Alright, hopefully something in those sections sparks some inspiration in you, maybe some old vault fodder that needs dusting off, or one of your favorite builds is finally going to see some light. But if you need a little more, then allow me to personally introduce you to stage 3 of the video, my top builds for the next sandbox. Number 1, I think Boots of the Assembler with Lumina is going to dominate this sandbox, especially in slower game types like Trials where you can kind of justify sitting in rifts for a long time. Run Ember of Benevolence and enjoy the 400% ability regeneration every time you heal somebody. Yes, this procs from a healing rift. Yes, this procs from Boots of Assembler healing. Yes, this procs from Lumina Noble rounds. What the fuck am I even looking at right now? Throw on more healing from your grenades and Radiant from Celestial Fire, and I don't think you're ever not going to have a healing rift up. Not even going to mention the free Lumina damage buff you and your friends are getting. Who needed target lock anyways, am I right? If you're looking for a more aggressive version of this build, especially for 6s, then look no further than build number 2, Frosty's Gunslinger, where Warlock primarily spams healing to proc Benevolence. Hunter can make use of its Acrobat's dodge and throwing knives to keep a high uptime on Radiant, and combined with Frosty's and other relevant soldier fragments, this is a solid way just to get your team free damage boosts and still not have to worry about your cooldowns. You're also not limited to Lumina with this one, so feel free to just run whatever gets the best value out of Radiant or helps you get your class ability back even faster. Giving some love to Titans with this next one, the next build that I think is going to start terrorizing your local Crucible lobbies is Peregrine Greaves and Monte Carlo. Peregrines to one-shot your opponents who don't have shotgun ammo yet, while Monte Carlo will help bypass the longer ability cooldowns with its exotic perk. You can also go for some crazy kill sprees with the ×5 Markov chain, as all 3 light subclasses have a way to regenerate health on a shoulder charge kill to get your chain going. I actually think all 3 have a good case for usage in different environments. Arc is probably the best just to land the shoulder charge thanks to knockout, jug shield, and flashbang grenades. Void is the best for survivability and shutdowns thanks to the suppress and overshields and offensive bulwark, while Solar can give your weapons ungodly time to kill numbers with Radiant on top of the ×5 Markov chain or Swashbuckler. Number 4 is going to be Astrocyte Verse for Voidwalkers. After the latest subclass challenge, Al and I put together a Trials subclass tier list that looks something like this. There's been quite a few updates and sandbox shifts since then, but you'll notice that we have Voidwalker sitting pretty at the top of A tier. But with Astrocyte's slide bug getting fixed, the melee getting buffed, and Devour about to be a lot more valuable, considering Astrocyte Blink is another movement ability that isn't having its cooldown nerfed, I think good Blink users are going to be having a good time this update. Even throw on a Glaive on top of it just to blink at people with no shotgun ammo, Echo of Leeching to heal after a successful stabbing. Yeah, we might be cooking something up with this one. Speaking of Glaives, let's talk about Feedback Fence Berserker with Banner of War. With Feedback Fence, every Glaive melee hit gives you an armor charge, and if they punch back at you at all, you're only going to have to stab them twice. Throw on Banner of War, Woven Mail, and maybe even Vex Caliber for the Overshield. Actually, if you want to run Sentinel instead, then that Overshield can give you a melee damage boost thanks to Offensive Bulwark, but I'm not sure if that will actually matter Unless you're maybe fighting against other overshields, that could be good. The last one for hunters is just going to be Athrus's Embrace with probably Monte Carlo. 3 crits from your weapon is all it takes to proc the 1-hit body throwing knives, which I'm assuming will still one-shot in the sandbox. Haven't actually tested it, but I'd be surprised if it didn't. I do know firsthand though that if you're good with these, then we're talking about infinite 1-hit body throwing knives that fully recharge in a kill and also will give you Radiant and make a good case for swashbuckler weapons and or Monte Carlo, kind of similar to the Peregrine Greaves build. Build 7 is the last one for Warlocks, and it's making use of I Have Another World for the nutty ability regen. And while it's useful on every subclass, there's really 3 main ways I see it getting used. Number 1 is to spam stasis turrets, number 2 is to spam Weave Walk on Strand, and number 3 is to spam Heat Rises on Solar. If you're a Dawnblade worried about not being able to float as often, then give this helmet a try. Not only is it going to keep your abilities fresh and ready, but it also passively gives you 15 AE, which will go great with the box breathing scout rifle I recommended at the beginning. And finally, for build number 8, we have the one I'm most afraid of, Crystal Spam Behemoth Titan. Hinra made a full breakdown on what this is going to look like. I'll link that video in the description if you want a detailed explanation, but with Tectonic Harvest, Whisper of Hunger, and Howl of the Storm, you only need 2 behemoths on your team to infinitely chain the melee crystals, and that's not even including your Glacier Grenade or Hoarfrost Barricade. Add Whisper of Rhyme for permanent overshield and Collective Action for permanent damage boost, and you have the very reason I am not touching 3-stack trials no matter how many rewards Bungie adds to it. And there you have it, a comprehensive list of balance oversights I plan to exploit extensively in the coming weeks. I'll likely be making showcase videos for any of the things that stand out to me in my playtesting, so make sure to stay tuned for those. If there's something I missed or something you're excited to give a go, let me know in the comments. In case you couldn't tell, I love discussing this kind of stuff, and I'm looking forward to hearing your ideas on what I missed. That's it for now. See you on the 5th.